A few months ago, I took a road trip through the desert. I was 35, a freelance photographer, and I needed inspiration for my next gallery. I liked traveling alone. The quiet roads helped me think. But those 3 experiences still puzzle me. It started when I pulled over at a rest area. The place was empty and looked run down. I just wanted to stretch my legs. I walked over to a picnic table. That's when I found a dirty map. It had strange symbols all over it. At first, I was curious. Maybe they were landmarks? But then I realized there were no towns nearby. A chill ran through me. I felt like someone was watching. I took a deep breath and left the map behind. Back on the road, I noticed a car behind me. It was dark and didn't seem to have a brand. It wasn't too close, but it never left my sight. I thought it was just another traveler, but I couldn't shake off the feeling. My heart raced a little, but I tried to just focus on the road. I drove faster, but the car stayed behind me like a shadow. As the sun set, everything felt different. The shadows grew long, and the desert looked eerie. I started seeing strange figures out of the corner of my eye. I'd glance over, but nothing would be there. Was it my tired mind? The quiet felt unsettling. Then my phone rang. I answered, but all I heard was static. It happened again and again. I almost threw my phone in frustration. I should have been alone, right? But it didn't feel that way. I stopped again later to grab some sunset photos. It looked beautiful. I set up my camera, but a shiver ran down my spine. I turned and thought I saw someone in the distance, but when I looked closer, it was empty. I shook off the weird moment and took my photos. My heart pounded. I knew I was overthinking again. That night, I reviewed my photos in the hotel. I felt a sense of dread wash over me. In one picture, I saw a dark silhouette behind a cactus. I could have sworn I hadn't seen anyone there. The shape was haunting. I got chills just staring at it. What was happening? I felt cold and uneasy. Trying to make sense of it all, I decided to leave early the next morning. But as I packed my things, I felt a weight on my chest. That dark car was parked outside. I hadn't seen anyone get in or out of it. I froze, unsure if I should leave or stay. Then, I saw movement. The figure inside the car was watching, and I felt paralyzed. I jumped in my own car and sped off. I kept looking in the rearview mirror, but the car stayed behind me, just out of sight. These experiences still haunt me. Maybe they were just in my head, or maybe something darker was out there following me. The desert felt empty, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone after all. The road stretched endlessly ahead of me. I drove faster now, trying to shake the feeling of that car tailing me. The sun had disappeared completely, leaving the sky a deep shade of indigo. I needed to get off the main highway. The vastness of the desert was overwhelming, but I wanted to find a smaller road. I hoped it would lead me somewhere safer. I spotted a turnoff marked by a worn sign, Desert View Road. It looked narrow and a bit overgrown, but I took the chance. The strange car had vanished from my view, and the quiet felt like a relief. I rolled down my window to feel the cool breeze against my face. It felt so different from the suffocating atmosphere at the hotel. As I drove deeper into the desert, the surroundings changed. The brush got thicker, and the occasional rock formations loomed like ancient sentinels. I pulled over to the side, hoping to find something interesting to photograph. There was an oddly shaped boulder nearby, and something about it drew me in. I stepped out and grabbed my camera. As I took a few shots, I noticed a strange smell in the air. It was pungent, like burnt rubber mixed with something sweet. I looked around, but there was no one else in sight. I dismissed it as a figment of my imagination and focused on the rock. That's when I noticed the glint of something metal near the base of the boulder. Curiosity got the better of me, and I approached it. I crouched down and dug my fingers into the dirt, revealing a small, tarnished pendant engraved with symbols matching those on the dirty map I left behind. My heart started racing. Why was this here? Suddenly, a sound interrupted my thoughts. A crunching noise behind me. I whipped around, camera poised, ready to capture anything. But there was nothing. My pulse quickened. I could feel that eerie sense of being watched return, crawling up my spine. I quickly scanned the area, but I was still alone. I took a deep breath and stood up, trying to calm myself. I forced a chuckle. Maybe I was just getting too into my head. I tucked the pendant into my pocket, feeling its weight against my leg. I started back towards my car when a chill twisted in my gut. The air felt thicker. Then, from the corner of my eye, I noticed movement again, a shadow darting between the rocks. My heart raced. I couldn't convince myself it was just fatigue now. I turned to face whatever it was, but it was gone. I felt a surge of adrenaline. I had to leave. I jumped back into my car and fumbled with the keys. As I started the engine and shifted into drive, a feeling of dread settled in my stomach. I had to get out of there. I looked in the rearview mirror once more. I half expected to see that dark car again, but the road behind me was empty. Just as I started to breathe easier, my phone buzzed in the passenger seat. I picked it up cautiously. One new message. I opened it and felt my heart drop. It was a photo, my photo from earlier that day, but it wasn't just a sunset. In the corner was the dark silhouette I thought I had imagined. I froze, staring at the screen. My hands trembled. What did this mean? Someone had been watching me, and that shadow in the picture felt anything but friendly. Suddenly, I heard footsteps outside my car. I turned my head slowly, the footsteps echoing like a drum in my ears. My heart raced. I wasn't alone anymore. Panic surged through me. I gripped the steering wheel, praying to myself that it was just an animal or a trick of the wind. But that hope was quickly crushed as a figure stepped into view. A man stood there, silhouetted against the fading light. He wore a wide-brimmed hat, casting a shadow over his face. I couldn't see his features, but I felt his stare bore into me, as if he could see right through the glass. My instincts screamed at me to drive away, to escape this looming nightmare. Instead, I sat frozen, unable to take my eyes off him. He took a step closer, and I noticed a glint in his hand. It looked like a knife, catching what little light remained. "Hey," he called out, his voice deep and gravelly. "You lost?" Lost? I wanted to laugh, but the fear lodged in my throat. "No, just passing through," I managed to say, trying to sound calm. "Passing through, huh?" He took another step closer. "What do you have there?" His gaze flicked to the passenger seat where my camera rested. I suddenly wished I had never stopped to take those photos. "Just some pictures," I replied, the tremor in my voice betraying me. "Let me see," he demanded, taking another step. I realized he was blocking my only escape route, the road behind him leading further into the darkness. I reached for my camera, my mind racing. Could I throw it at him? Distract him? My thoughts spun wildly as I weighed my options. "It's not much," I said, my voice shaking. "Just landscapes." He smirked, and my skin crawled at the sight. "Landscapes don't usually have shadows like that," he said, nodding toward my phone. My breath caught. He had seen the photo. I had no idea how to explain it, how to tell him that I was as much in the dark as he seemed to be. "I just took some photos of a rock." Before I could finish, he lunged toward me. Adrenaline kicked in. I slammed the car into reverse, tires screeching against the gravel as I backed away from him. I saw his eyes widen in surprise. The knife glinted in his hand, but I didn't look back. I stomped on the gas, my heart pounding in my ears. As I sped down the road, the landscape blurred past me. I dared a glance in the rearview mirror, but he was gone. Just like that, I was alone again, except for the hollow echo of fear that filled my chest. It wasn't over. I could still feel his presence, like a dark cloud hanging over me. I needed to find out more about that pendant. What did it mean? And who was that man? I pushed deeper into the desert. The road twisted and turned, but I kept driving, driven by a mix of fear and compulsion. I had to know. As I rounded a bend, I saw a flickering light up ahead. My heart quickened again, but this time with a flicker of hope. Maybe there was someone there who could help. An answer. But as I approached, something in my gut told me I wasn't the only one drawn to that light. That was when everything went dark. I jolted awake, my body slumped against the seat. My heart raced anew as I looked around for the flickering light. It was gone. In its place, an unsettling stillness enveloped me, thick and heavy. My headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the empty road ahead, but no sign of life greeted me. Panic slithered back into my chest. Had I driven that far? Had something happened when I'd lost consciousness? I quickly checked my phone. No signal. Perfect. Just me and the silence of the desert. I took a deep breath and forced myself to focus. I needed to figure out what to do next. The last thing I remembered was that light. I turned the key in the ignition, willed the engine to hum to life, but an unsettling noise echoed. Something was wrong. The car sputtered and stalled, the dashboard lights flickering before fading completely. Desperation clawed at me. I unbuckled my seatbelt and stepped out into the night. My shoes crunched against the gravel. The chill in the air bit at my skin. I scanned my surroundings, searching for any sign of the flickering light I had seen before. My eyes caught a distant glow, barely visible against the dark. Maybe it was a highway or a house. Somewhere with people, somewhere safe. I stumbled toward the light, each step igniting a mix of hope and fear. As I walked, the silence pressed against my ears, and the shadows felt deeper and more threatening. I kept thinking about the man with the knife. What if he was still out there? What if he was following me? My mind spiraled with what-ifs, pushing me harder toward the glow. It grew brighter as I got closer, revealing the silhouette of a building, the kind you see on old movie sets, a dusty old diner with an open sign barely hanging on. Anxiety surged within me, battling the lure of that light. I approached cautiously, drawn closer to its warmth. Just outside the diner, I paused, peering through the glass. Inside, a handful of patrons sat at the counter, oblivious to my presence. The smell of coffee wafted through the door, comforting yet foreign. But something was off. Their faces seemed tense, eyes darting between each other, whispers trailing off as they turned toward me. I pushed through the door, the bell jingling in a way that felt almost mockingly cheerful in the tense atmosphere. The chatter halted, and all eyes fell upon me. I forced a smile, but it felt brittle. "Can I help you?" a woman behind the counter asked, her voice steady but her hands trembling slightly. My car broke down. I just saw that light and—" My sentence trailed off as I felt their stares deepen. The tension in the room thickened. "Best keep moving, girl," a man said from the corner booth. His voice was rough, as if he'd spoken too little and drank too much. "You don't want to be here after dark." "Why?" I asked, though I regretted it the moment the question left my lips. No one responded. They exchanged glances, all silent, as if sharing a secret I wasn't meant to know. That's when I noticed it, a glint on the counter, hidden behind a stack of glasses. A pendant, identical to the one I'd found. My heart dropped. Just as I bent closer to get a better look, the door swung open, and a gust of wind rushed in. The diner's atmosphere shifted abruptly. A chill washed over me. My eyes snapped to the entrance, and my breath hitched as a familiar figure stepped inside, silhouetted against the light behind him. "I told you to stay away," he said, the same gravelly voice sending a wave of dread crashing over me. The diner fell eerily silent. My heart raced, trapped somewhere between flight and fight. I wanted to shrink back into the shadows, but my feet refused to move. The man approached, his eyes piercing and unrelenting. I recognized him instantly, the jagged scar on his cheek serving as a grim reminder of our last encounter. "You weren't supposed to come here," he continued, his voice low, almost a whisper, but loud enough for everyone to hear. The patrons shifted, their bodies rigid as they watched. Panic surged within me, and I felt the walls starting to close in. "Get out!" the woman behind the counter pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper. She looked between us, trembling like a leaf about to fall. "No," I said, surprising myself with the firmness of my own voice. "I need to know what's going on." The man's lips curled into a smirk, but there was no warmth in it. "What's going on? You think you're here by accident?" He stepped closer, and I could smell the faint musk of sweat and something sharp, like iron. "You're part of this now. You can't just walk away. There's nothing to be afraid of, right?" I forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow. The diner suddenly felt impossibly small, like it was waiting for something to break. The patrons exchanged worried glances, their eyes reflecting a shared understanding of an unspoken truth. I felt like I had stumbled into a nightmare I didn't belong in. "What do you mean?" I pressed, desperate for answers, desperate for the strength to face him. "What do you want from me?" He leaned in closer. "You will know soon enough. But you should have listened. You don't want to be here when it gets darker." Before I could respond, the lights above flickered and dimmed, casting strange shadows across the room. My breath quickened as I instinctively took a step back. The man straightened, eyes narrowing. "See? It's already starting. The others will come for you." He took a step back toward the door, but not before casting one last glance at me. "You can run, but it won't matter." As he slipped into the night, panic morphed into urgency. I had to get out of here. I turned to the woman behind the counter. "Please, I need to use your phone." Her face paled. "No signal out here. You'll be better off staying put until morning." "Morning?" I laughed incredulously, but it came out shaky. "You expect me to just wait here for help while I'm being hunted?" "Not hunted." The man in the corner spoke up, his tone grim. "Watched. They'll know you're here." "Who?" I demanded, though I wished I hadn't. "Just leave while you still can," he replied, eyes darting to the window, as if he expected something to appear. That's when I noticed something outside. Dark shapes moved just beyond the dim light of the diner. They lingered at the edge of the road, shifting and circling. I stepped back instinctively, terror clawing at my throat. "Stay inside. Don't open the door," a woman muttered, her voice trembling. The door squeaked as the last customer left in haste, leaving me with a sudden weight of despair. I glanced around the diner, the faces of the patrons now clouding with fear, and my instincts screamed that help would never come. Then everything went dark. I gasped as the lights flickered back to life, the familiar hum of the diner's neon sign illuminating the faces frozen in fear. But the moment was short-lived. A loud crash echoed from outside, like a glass shattering against the pavement. I flinched, heart pounding as if it wanted to escape my chest. "Stay away from the windows!" the woman behind the counter shouted, urgency breaking through her earlier timidness. I moved instinctively to the side, pressing myself against the cool steel of the counter. I glanced at the patrons, their eyes wide, as they exchanged terrified whispers. "What was that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "It's them," the man in the corner replied. "They know you're here." I tried to focus on his words, but the anxious energy in the room tightened around me. I needed a way out. Panic clawed at the edges of my mind, suffocating any thoughts of rationality. I scanned the diner, looking for an escape. That's when I caught sight of the back door marked with a small, employees-only sign. A plan formed in my head. If I could get outside, I might find help, or at least a place to hide. But the shapes outside loomed larger now. Dark figures stretching along the roadside as if they were ropes tethered to some unseen force. "What's out there?" I demanded, my voice rising in desperation. He shook his head, fear etching deeper lines on his face. "You don't want to know." I moved toward the back door. There was no time to waste. "I have to get out of here," I said, trying to convince myself more than him. As I reached for the handle, the diner erupted into chaos. The lights flickered erratically, plunging us into brief intervals of darkness, punctuated by the sounds of scraping and whispers outside. The air thickened with dread. Suddenly, the door burst open, and a gust of wind swept through the diner as a figure stumbled in, barely managing to catch themselves on the counter. My breath hitched, and I felt my heart race anew. "Run!" the newcomer shouted, wide-eyed and frantic. "They're coming for you!" I froze, caught between instinct and confusion. My eyes darted to the door, then back to the terrified face in front of me. The patrons surged backward, shoving to the corners of the diner, shadows merging as panic spread like wildfire. "Who?" I shouted, but even as I did, the answer felt irrelevant. The fear in the air was palpable, and I could see it reflected in everyone's eyes. I needed to move. I couldn't stay here any longer. "That's it! Now! Go!" the newcomer screamed again, urgency cutting through the chaos. As the shadows outside grew darker, I made my decision. I turned on my heel and sprinted toward the back door, the voices of the crowd fading into a muffled roar behind me. The door swung open with a loud creak, and the cool night air hit me like a slap in the face. But just as I stepped outside, I stopped dead in my tracks. That's when I saw it. A glint of metal in the moonlight. A figure standing stark still just out of reach, watching intently. My gut twisted as dread settled over me. The feeling that I had just stepped into a trap. I took a step back, heart racing. It was too late to turn back now. The figure didn't move, just stood there, shrouded in darkness. My blood ran cold as I squinted, trying to make out more details. It felt like staring at a painting that faded into smoke the longer I looked. Just an outline, but my instincts screamed at me to run. Behind me, the sounds of the diner began to fade away, replaced by a chilling silence. The shadows gathered again, twisted shapes creeping toward me as I stood paralyzed. I took another step back, my foot barely making contact with the asphalt, when something loud exploded from the diner. A crash, followed by a screech that pierced the air. "Go!" the voice from the entrance yelled urgently. But I was stuck, my mind in chaos. Then, the figure moved. It raised its arms slowly, and the glint of metal became clearer. A weapon of some sort. A knife? A bat? I couldn't tell. Whatever it was, the way it hung limply made it more menacing. It was waiting for me to make the next move. I felt my heart hammering in my chest, a mix of fear and adrenaline propelling me to act. I bolted in the opposite direction toward the far side of the diner. I didn't know where I was running, but the urge to escape was stronger than any rational thought. The night air hit me hard, cool, yet suffocating. I couldn't hear anything but my breath and the pounding of my heart. I threw a glance over my shoulder, and to my horror, the figure was following me, moving with a deliberate slowness that felt more like stalking than pursuit. My eyes flitted around for options. There were trees lining the roadside, their black silhouettes stretching tall. If I could reach them, maybe I could lose them. I pushed forward, sprinting toward the nearest trunk. But as I neared the trees, something caught my foot. I stumbled forward, hitting the ground hard, the impact shaking the air from my lungs. Pain coursed through my leg, but I didn't have time to worry about that. I pushed myself to stand, glancing back. The figure had paused at the edge of the diner's exterior, as if deciding whether to pursue me into the forest. My heart raced as I realized I still had a chance. I scrambled to my feet and took off into the trees, branches whipping against my skin. I was lost in the dark, the world around me nothing but shadows and rustling leaves. I could feel the fear gripping my heart, but I pressed on, forcing myself deeper. Then, an ominous noise shattered the stillness. A low growl echoing through the night. It wasn't just the figure following me now. Something else was out there, lurking in the dark. I stopped dead, the air thick with fear. Then I saw it, a pair of glowing eyes peering back at me through the underbrush. My breath caught in my throat, and a sense of dread washed over me like ice water. I was trapped. I turned to run, not knowing which direction would save me. The figure was still close, and the growl behind me was growing louder. The night was closing in. Every sense screamed at me to flee, but there was nowhere to hide. I had to face whatever was coming. My heart raced as I pushed forward, but then everything went dark. I woke up to the sound of rustling leaves and a sharp pain in my leg. My heart raced as I blinked against the darkness. The ground beneath me was cold and damp, and I could feel the weight of the night pressing on my chest. I struggled to sit up, my surroundings still hidden in the shadows. Panic clawed at me, reminding me of the two threats I had just encountered. I pushed myself to my feet, wincing as the pain shot through my calf. I had fallen, but how long was I out? I looked around, trying to regain my bearings, but the trees appeared like a maze of black outlines, each one blending into the next. Somewhere, a twig snapped behind me. My breath hitched and I froze. "Hello?" I called out, my voice a whisper swallowed by the trees. There was no reply, just silence. I strained my ears, listening, but all I could hear was the soft rustling of leaves and the distant hum of cicadas. Just a moment ago, I had felt like I was being hunted. Now it felt as though the darkness itself was watching me. I took a deep breath and stepped carefully in the direction I thought would be the nearest escape. My every movement felt loud in the stillness. I stayed low, seeking the safety of the trees, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was close. Then I spotted it. A flash of movement among the branches. My heart dropped as I peered closer. It wasn't the figure from the diner, but something smaller and quicker, darting between the trees. A raccoon? My eyes narrowed, and I could finally make out its shape as it neared the ground. But then it stopped, standing still beneath the thin moonlight. No, it wasn't a raccoon. It looked almost human, crouched low, its eyes gleaming unnaturally in the dark. I took a cautious step back, my pulse pounding in my ears. The figure was familiar. But how could this be? It must be a trick of the light, or my mind playing games after the fear I had just experienced. That's when I saw it, the glint of metal strapped to its side, the weapon not unlike the one the figure in the diner had brandished. I swallowed hard, my instincts screaming to run again, but my legs felt rooted to the ground. "Stay back!" I shouted, my voice stronger than I felt, my hands clenched into fists, ready to fight or flee. But then, the creature let out a low, guttural sound, and I felt the hairs on my arms stand on end. This could not be happening. It lunged at me, and I took off, still not knowing where to go. The figure, both of them, were closing in. I could feel the weight of their pursuit tightening around me, but as I sprinted, I stumbled upon a clearing. In the center stood an old car, half buried in leaves. Lights flickered in the driver's side window, and for a moment, hope surged in my chest. I ran for it, praying it was a way out. Then the growl returned, louder than before, echoing through the trees. I reached the car just as the sounds of chaos spilled back into my world. But the door was locked. I pulled on the handle frantically. "Let me in!" I screamed, my heart pounding. But there was no answer. I turned around, my breath hitched again as the glowing eyes stared back at me. I was out of options. Just then, I heard a voice from inside the car. "Get in!" I spun, shock ripping through me. But in that split second, a growl sounded beside me, and everything spiraled into darkness again. I jolted awake, gasping for air. Confusion swirled around me in the shadows, and it took a moment to realize I was still on the ground beside the car. The voice from inside had vanished, leaving only the deep growl resonating nearby. My body felt heavy, and my mind raced to catch up. Where was I? What was chasing me? I pushed myself up slowly, scanning the dimly lit clearing. The air was thick with tension, and the stench of something rotten crept into my nostrils. I wiped sweat from my brow, steadying my breath. I wasn't sure how long I had been out, but I couldn't waste any more time. I had to get away. With a grunt, I pushed against the rusted door of the car, hoping it might open now. To my surprise, it creaked open slightly. I peered inside, heart racing. The interior was dark, and I could barely make out the outline of a figure slumped against the steering wheel. I felt a flicker of relief at the thought of safety, but was stopped short. What if it was another threat? Suddenly, the growl rang out again, closer this time. Without hesitating, I dove into the car and slammed the door shut behind me. My breath came in shaky gasps as I fumbled for the locks, my palms slick against the metal. I turned to the figure in the driver's seat. "Are you okay?" I blurted out, hoping for a response. I was met with silence. The faint glow of the overhead lights flickered on, illuminating the inside of the car. It was cramped and cluttered. Empty bottles rolled beneath the seats. I squinted at the figure. It was a man, his face pale and eyes shut. He seemed to be unconscious or worse. Panic threatened to break through again, and I shook him gently. "Wake up, please." Nothing, just the rumble of that guttural growl growing louder outside. I could feel my heart pounding in my throat. I had no idea how long I could stay hidden in here. I glanced around frantically and saw a thick tree branch wedged against the passenger door. It would have to do. Just then, I noticed something glinting on the dashboard. There, lying next to a half-empty soda can, was a knife. I grabbed it, feeling a surge of determination mixed with fear. If whatever was outside got in, I would need to fight back. I could hear the creature pacing now, claws scraping against the ground. It was close. I leaned against the window, trying to make out any shapes beyond the glass, but the shadows swallowed everything. As I gathered my thoughts, I heard something. Perhaps a whisper. It was soft, floating through the stillness. I strained to listen, thought I recognized what it said. Help us. My stomach dropped. Help who? Who was in danger? I glanced around the grimy car, wondering if another voice had whispered before I'd passed out. I couldn't stay much longer waiting for answers. I needed to act. With my heart pounding in my ears, I prepared to open the door again, gripping the knife tightly. Just as I drew a breath to push it open, the growl erupted into a deafening roar. The door shook slightly as something slammed against it, and then everything went dark again. I woke up disoriented, tangled in shadows and the faint scent of burnt rubber. I squinted against the blinding light spilling into the clearing and groaned as I pushed myself upright. My heart raced as I saw the rusted car I'd been hiding in. No sign of the figure or whatever had been chasing me. Panic surged through me, but I forced myself to breathe. The clearing felt eerily quiet, the only sounds being the low hum of cicadas and the soft whisper of the wind. I climbed out of the car cautiously, scanning my surroundings for any signs of the dark figure or that low growl. Nothing. The pendant in my pocket suddenly felt heavier, as if the very weight of what I'd found pressed down on my consciousness. I glanced at the darkened diner in the distance, but something about its silhouette felt ominous, haunted. I needed to leave. Just as I turned to navigate back through the trees, I caught sight of a flash in the corner of my eye. I stiffened, bracing for whatever had followed me, but it was only a flicker of movement, a small animal darting between the bushes. I took a deep breath, reminding myself I was still alive. I glanced back at the diner one last time and noticed a low mist creeping in, curling toward me. The sight sent chill bumps racing across my arms. I turned and jogged toward the tree line, marking what I hoped was safety, the pendant clinking against my thigh with each step. With each stride deeper into the woods, I felt a sense of urgency grip me. Had I escaped the threats, or were they merely waiting, biding their time? I pushed on, the memory of the growl chasing me like a whisper I couldn't shake. As I navigated the unfamiliar terrain, I stumbled upon a narrow path partially obscured by overgrown weeds. The path forked before me, one leading left into thicker underbrush, and the other curving right toward what appeared to be a hidden clearing. Instinctively, I chose the right path. The underbrush thinned and soon opened to another vista. In the center stood a dilapidated shack, its wooden beams sagging under years of neglect. There were markings on the door, symbols eerily similar to those engraved on the pendant. My heart raced at the sight. Still unsure if the pendant was a key or a curse, I approached cautiously. As I reached for the doorknob, a soft rustling sound broke the silence, followed by quiet whispers. I hesitated, my breath hitching, and dared to peer inside the shack through a cracked window. The interior was dark, the air thick with dust and decay. There were remnants of old furniture, covered in sheets and cobwebs. In the corner, I spotted a silhouette. A person crouched low, fingers curled around what looked like another pendant. "Help us." The whisper broke through again, sending a shiver down my spine. I pushed the creaking door open slowly, the hinges protesting against the emptiness. The figure looked up, revealing large, frightened eyes. "Please, they're coming," the person said, their voice a fragile thread. "Who?" I replied, stepping inside cautiously. "What do you mean?" "They come when the sun goes down," they murmured, clutching the pendant tightly. "They wait for the lost ones." The air thickened as shadows began to stretch across the room. My heart raced, realizing the danger was not over. It felt like the night itself was closing in, drawn by the whispers of panic echoing through the walls. I turned, a chill settling in my gut as I sensed movement. Dark shapes creeping along the edges of the shack. The air crackled with an energy I couldn't place, and I backed away toward the door. "What do we do?" I asked, panic creeping into my voice. The figures shook their head, their eyes wide with fear. "We need to leave, but it's too late." And just like that, everything shifted again. The figures outside grew clearer, shadows forming into recognizable shapes. Yes, they were people, but their faces twisted with unfamiliarity, hanging in the thickening fog. I stumbled back into the night, adrenaline pumping, heart racing. I could finally see them, the figures from my nightmares, those who seemed trapped between darkness and light. The whispers turned into a cacophony, voices mingling with warnings and desperate cries. As I dashed from the shack, I felt a presence at my back, like shadows breathing down my neck. No escape. The road behind me lay shrouded in mists, curling into oblivion. I turned to the person still inside the shack. "Come with me." But as I moved to pull them from their seat, they only shook their head. "You have to go, before they take you too." And in that moment, I understood the weight of the pendant against my leg, the history etched into its metal. An omen, a warning. But I had to survive. I ran, bursting into the night, leaving confusion behind, sprinting toward uncertain safety, knowing the questions would follow. My breaths came in ragged gasps as I navigated the dense woods. I could feel those eyes watching me. Were they lost too? What happened to the person in the shack? As dawn broke, the mists began to lift, and with it, a part of my frantic cheer returned. I stepped onto the pavement of the road I thought would lead me to safety, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Did the shadows come alive at night? Or was it my mind conjuring fears I thought I had left behind? I slowed, looking back toward the woods, then shook it off. Eventually I reached a familiar highway, the sun breaking through the clouds, illuminating the expansive desert again. But even with the warmth of the sunlight, an unsettling calm settled over me that never seemed to fade, leaving a nagging question in the back of my mind. I stood for a moment, still not sure if I had escaped or if the darkness merely waited for my return. In the depths of my memories, the unseen shadows whispered, their echoes trailing behind me, unanswered and unresolved. With a heavy heart, I set off down the road, uncertain of what lay ahead, hoping the light would guide me home.